I was still smiling for pictures when my husband leaned in and whispered, "Get your bag. We're leaving." Act normal. Something's very wrong. The birthday cake hadn't even been cut. But when he locked the car doors and floored it down the highway, I knew whatever was happening. It wasn't just about Grandpa. The estate looked like a scene from a movie: gold-rimmed glasses, soft jazz floating in the air, and velvet drapes swaying as the breeze kissed the chandeliers. It was Grandpa's 90th birthday, a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. Your sister had rented the family manor for the night, sparing no expense. Everything gleamed: silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, polished oak floors, the finest wine flowing like water. The kind of gathering where everyone wore smiles too white to be real. You arrived late, dressed in emerald silk, your husband's hand resting gently on your lower back. He always grounded you, calm, observant, logical. But tonight something about him felt off. His eyes scanned the room too quickly. His jaw clenched too tightly. You leaned in with a playful nudge. "What's wrong?" "Nerves about the big toast." He gave you a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes.
"No."
"Just watching," he murmured. You laughed it off. He always overanalyzed things, especially when it came to your family. But tonight was supposed to be different. A celebration. A rare moment of unity. Your sister, glowing in sequins, floated through the room like a socialite, kissing cheeks and offering champagne. Your brother stood tall, charming the guests like a polished politician, always knowing the right thing to say. You admired them, despite the distance that had crept in over the years. Tonight was their masterpiece, and they'd made sure everyone knew it. Then something small happened. Something off. Your husband's hand tensed on your waist as your brother's phone buzzed mid-toast. Instead of silencing it, he stepped away from the mic, took the call, and whispered urgently into the phone behind a closed door. Seconds later, your sister joined him. Her expression, momentarily stripped of charm, was sharp, calculating. She looked worried. But when they returned, everything was reset. Smiles.
Toasts.
Laughter. Except your husband wasn't smiling anymore. "I don't like this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the clinking of glasses. You raised an eyebrow. "Don't like what?" He didn't answer at first. Just stared at your sister, who was now whispering something into Grandpa's ear, smiling sweetly. Then your brother walked by and gave your husband a long, unreadable glance. A cold one. Something flickered behind your husband's eyes, like he'd just connected so you hadn't even noticed on the page. He leaned closer, his lips brushing your ear. "Get your bag. We're leaving."
"Right now."
"Act like everything's fine." You blinked.
"What?"
"Why?" He looked at you, really looked at you, and for the first time in years, he looked afraid. "Because something is very, very wrong." You wanted to argue, to laugh, to brush it off again. But your stomach twisted, like it knew before your brain did. Still, you forced a smile. You waved at your cousin across the room. You took a final sip of champagne, with shaking hands. Minutes later, in the car, you turned to him. "What the hell is going on?" He locked the doors before answering. Not dramatic. Not panicked. Just methodical. "They know something. Something you don't. I saw your sister hand a key to your brother during dinner. I saw your name on a text thread when your brother was scrolling. And your grandfather, he looked scared. When I shook his hand, he slipped me a note." You froze. "What kind of note?" He pulled a small folded paper from his pocket and handed it to you. In Grandpa's shaky handwriting were just 6 words. "They'll take everything once I'm gone." Your heart dropped. And 7 minutes later, you were dialing the police. Not because you were scared, but because you were finally starting to understand what your family had been planning behind the curtain of celebration. And the show was just getting started. You had never fake smiled so hard in your life. As your sister clinked glasses with the mayor and your brother retold childhood stories to the cousins, you quietly reached for your clutch. Your legs moved on autopilot, your face frozen in a polite smile. Your husband whispered instructions like a lifeline. "Wave goodbye. Don't look back. Just walk." The two of you slipped out the front door and into the cool night. The laughter behind you felt hollow now, like a trap door slamming shut. By the time you reached the car, your heart was pounding like a warning drum. You barely had time to settle into the passenger seat before click. He locked all the doors. "What are you doing?" you asked, voice shaky. He turned the engine, but his eyes stayed on you. "They're setting you up," he said quietly. Tonight wasn't a celebration. It was a trap. You stared at him, disbelieving. "What are you talking about?" "I saw things. Your brother's phone screen had legal documents with your name. Something about a transfer of assets. And your sister handed him a flash drive before dinner, labeled with your initials." Your mind raced. "That doesn't make any sense. Why would they?" He cut you off. "Because your grandfather changed his will. Left everything to you." You blinked. "What?" "He told me weeks ago, privately. Said he finally saw through your siblings' manipulation. Said you were the only one who ever visited when there weren't cameras around." You felt like the ground was shifting beneath you. "But
I didn't ask for that."
I know. That's why he trusted you. You didn't even realize you were crying until your hands trembled on your lap. "They're trying to make you disappear legally," he continued. "Discredit you. Maybe even frame you." That's when he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small, cheap burner phone. He handed it to you like a weapon. "You're calling the police. Not from your phone. Not from mine. From this." You hesitated. "Tell them to check your name in the system," he said. Your fingers moved, almost against your will, punching in the emergency number. The line clicked. A dispatcher answered. You gave your name. There was a pause. Then another. Then a shift in tone. "We need you to stay where you are," the dispatcher said. "A warrant was issued for your arrest 20 minutes ago. Identity fraud and financial tampering." You nearly dropped the phone.
"What?"
"That's impossible. I haven't done anything. I'm just reading what's in the system, ma'am." Your husband grabbed the phone and spoke fast, giving coordinates, warning the dispatcher of a possible setup, demanding an investigator, not a local officer. By the time he hung up, your breathing had turned to gasps. You gripped the dashboard like it might anchor you back to reality. "This can't be happening," you whispered. "They're trying to erase me. They're trying to take what should be yours," he replied. "But they made one mistake." You looked at him, eyes pleading. "They forgot you're not alone this time." His voice was calm, but deadly certain. Just then, flashing lights appeared in the distance, headed toward you. But instead of feeling rescued, you felt like the real game was just beginning. Because if your family was willing to orchestrate a celebration just to bury you in plain sight, what else were they capable of? And worse, what if Grandpa's note was just the beginning? At the station, you sat in a cold interview room, bright lights, sterile air, and a mirror that felt like it watched more than reflected. You still couldn't wrap your head around the words the detective just said. "You are the sole beneficiary in a newly filed will." Your voice was barely a whisper. "That doesn't make sense. Grandpa never told me." The detective raised a brow. "That's not what your husband said. He claims your grandfather told him weeks ago." You blinked. "But why wouldn't Grandpa tell me directly?" He didn't answer. Just slid a folder across the table. Inside was a notarized copy of the new will.
Signed.
Stamped. Dated 10 days ago. Every asset, every property, every offshore account, all transferred to you. No mention of your sister or brother. Not even a token inheritance. That explained a lot. It explained the tight smiles. The sudden family reunion. The odd way Grandpa had seemed drugged, unfocused, barely present, propped up in his chair like a museum relic. It wasn't a birthday party. It was an ambush in formal wear. You remembered the way your sister kept steering Grandpa away from conversations, the way she controlled his wine glass. You remembered your brother snapping discreet photos on his phone, photos that now, in hindsight, were deliberately staged. You beside Grandpa. You taking his hand. You leading him toward the study. Images that could be twisted into evidence. "You're being accused," the detective continued, "of elder abuse and coercive manipulation, forcing a vulnerable man to rewrite his will in your favor." You almost laughed. It sounded so absurd. Except it was working. They had filed a report before the party even started. That's why the warrant already existed. That's why your name was flagged. The birthday was never about honoring Grandpa, it was about cornering you publicly. The celebration was camouflage, and you were the target. Your hands trembled as you stared down at the will. It was real. You hadn't asked for it.
You didn't even know about it.
And yet it painted a target on your back. That's when the door opened, and your husband stepped in with someone you didn't recognize, an older man in a suit. Sharp-eyed. Quiet. He nodded at the detective and handed him another envelope. "This changes things," he said. You looked at your husband. "What's happening?" He knelt beside you, voice low. "I went to the attorney's office. Grandpa didn't just change the will, he left a video recording. Explaining why." Your heart slammed. The detective plugged in a USB. And there he was.
Grandpa.
Awake.
Clear-eyed.
Sitting in his favorite library chair. "If you're watching this," he began, "then my children have done exactly what I feared they would." He took a deep breath. "I've left everything to my granddaughter, not because she asked, but because she never did. Because when my heart failed last spring, she was the only one who stayed. The only one who didn't ask about money." Your eyes burned with tears. "I know they'll twist this," Grandpa said. "They'll make it look like abuse. But I know her heart. And if the law needs proof of my state of mind, let this video be it." He looked straight into the camera. "They deserve nothing. She deserves peace." The screen went black. Silence filled the room. You exhaled, a breath you didn't realize you were holding. The detective looked up slowly. "Well," he said, "looks like this birthday party just turned into a criminal investigation, but not against you." You leaned back in your chair, heart pounding. Your siblings thought they'd buried you tonight. But Grandpa had just given you the shovel. You always believed family meant loyalty. Until blood turned to poison. As the investigation deepened, truth didn't trickle in. It came crashing like a tidal wave. The detective's words echoed in your ears. This wasn't spontaneous. This was rehearsed. For months. They started pulling records, interviews, security footage from Grandpa's estate. And then the flashbacks hit, sharp and cutting. Flashback. Age 10. You were the only one who sat with Grandpa during his garden walks, asking about the old days, not his bank balance. Your sister used to roll her eyes. "Trying to be teacher's pet won't get you in the will," she snapped once. You remember laughing. You didn't care about inheritance. You just liked his stories. But they cared.
Deeply.
Flashback. Age 22. Your brother stormed out of Grandpa's hospital room after a will revision meeting. "He cut my trust fund by half," he spat. "Guess someone's been whispering in his ear." You were too naive back then to understand it was resentment, not grief, that fueled their rage. Now, years later, the mask had finally fallen. The detective handed you photos, grainy, taken from security cameras installed by Grandpa's private attorney weeks before the party. One showed a woman arriving at the estate, dressed in scrubs. The so-called live-in nurse your siblings insisted on hiring. But her name wasn't in any registry. In fact, her real name was Candace Marsh, convicted twice for identity fraud, and a close friend of your sister since college. You whispered, "They planted her in his house." The detective nodded. "To monitor him, to isolate him, to drug him." Then came the pharmacy reports. Multiple medications prescribed to Grandpa, ones he'd never needed. Memory suppressants, sedatives, all approved under a power of attorney that had mysteriously switched to your brother last fall. Your stomach twisted. "They were trying to make him appear mentally unfit," you whispered. "So, the will wouldn't stand up in court." "Exactly," the detective said. "But they moved too fast, got greedy, and they didn't count on your husband watching them." Flashback. 1 week before the party. You'd found Grandpa in his study, asleep mid-sentence. He'd been writing a letter to you. His teacup was still warm. Your sister had shrugged. "He's old. Let him rest." But something about his eyes that day, clouded, confused, didn't feel like normal aging.
Now you knew why.
He wasn't sleeping. He was being silenced. Back in the present, your hands gripped the edge of the police station table. Rage was building, not loud but slow burning, like fire crawling beneath the surface. They didn't just want the money. They wanted to erase you, to paint you as a manipulator, an abuser, a thief. And for what? Because Grandpa loved you more? Because he trusted you? Because you never begged for a cent? The truth was clear now. The party wasn't a celebration. It was a final act of vengeance by two children who had spent their lives in Grandpa's shadow, resenting every smile he gave you. You were never their sister. You were their threat. Now, sitting in the silence after the detective left, your husband took your hand. You're not going to let them win, are you? You looked at him. No, you said. They wanted a war. Your voice hardened. They've got one. Because betrayal runs in blood. But so does justice. They started it with lies. You finished it with evidence. The moment you stepped out of that police station, your path was no longer about surviving. It was about dismantling everything your siblings built on deceit. And you weren't alone. Your husband, quiet, methodical, dangerous when cornered, had already been preparing for this day long before the party. He was more than your partner.
He was your weapon.
2 months earlier, unbeknownst to you, he'd seen the warning signs, the forged papers, the sudden calls from your sister to Grandpa's new caregiver. The documents with legal phrasing your brother was too sloppy to conceal. So he began documenting emails, voice notes, video surveillance from Grandpa's estate, bank account access logs, med schedules, everything. He kept it in a locked folder named Sunset, a nod to the estate where it all began. And when the time came, he handed it to your legal team. Courtroom day 1. The courtroom was full. Press had caught wind of the drama. A granddaughter accused of elder abuse, then suddenly, tables turned. Your sister wore a soft cardigan and false innocence. Your brother leaned on his Harvard degree and smirked with arrogance. But their confidence cracked the moment your husband submitted the first exhibit. A video of your brother altering Grandpa's pill organizer, twice the recommended dosage. Then came the forged emails from Grandpa to a lawyer who didn't exist, cross-referenced with IP addresses, all traced back to your sister's boutique office downtown. Then the kicker, audio. Your sister's voice caught on a hot mic, whispering to the fake nurse. He's barely coherent. Just a few more days, and the will won't matter. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even the judge's brow arched.
Courtroom day 5.
They tried to discredit your husband, claimed the surveillance was illegal. But everything had been cleared with Grandpa's written consent, signed 3 weeks before the party. Then came the final moment. A hush fell as the side door opened, and Grandpa, alert, steady, walked into the courtroom using his old cane. Your siblings looked like they'd seen a ghost. He raised his hand, took the oath, and stared directly at the bench. My son and daughter, he said, voice clear and strong, tried to silence me. But my granddaughter was the only one who ever listened when no one else was watching. He recounted it all. The tampering, the isolation, the fear, the loyalty, and finally his choice. I left everything to her because she earned it, not with blood, but with love. The verdict. The court ruled in your favor. All charges dropped. Your siblings were indicted on multiple felony counts: fraud, elder abuse, perjury, attempted asset theft. Their careers? Over. Your sister's boutique lost its sponsors within a week. Your brother's firm erased his name from the partner wall. Their reputations?
Shattered.
Their inheritance? Frozen. Transferred.
Gone.
You stood outside the courthouse as the press swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones extended. But you said nothing. You didn't need to. You won by letting the truth speak louder than revenge. And yet, deep inside, it was revenge. The quiet kind. The permanent kind. The kind that made them watch you walk away. The house was quiet now. Peaceful. No hushed plotting behind doors. No fake toasts. No heavy tension hanging in the air like perfume. Just Grandpa, sipping tea on the porch, humming Sinatra as the sun set behind the hills. You moved him into your home 3 months after the trial. He insisted he didn't want to be a burden, but you told him the truth. You were never the burden. You were the gift. He sleeps better here, eats better, laughs more. Sometimes, you catch him watching you and your husband with this quiet, wistful look, like he's finally seeing the family he always wanted but never got to live in. The court victories are long behind you now, but their shadows linger. Your sister lost her boutique when sponsors pulled out overnight. The designer labels she used to flaunt now gather dust in pawn shops. Your brother? Disbarred. His name stripped from the firm's site. He sells insurance now under an alias, pretending the scandal was fake news. You never speak to them. You never have to, because every year, on Grandpa's birthday, you send them both the same thing. A single black and white photo. Grandpa, beaming, truly happy, seated between you and your husband, surrounded by flowers, books, and peace. No caption. No explanation. Just proof. Proof of who he chose in the end. Proof of what they tried to steal, but couldn't keep. You launched the Walter Foundation in his name, focused on elder justice, inheritance law reform, and protecting vulnerable seniors from family exploitation. The irony? You used the very assets they tried to erase you for. Donations poured in once the press ran the headline. Granddaughter turned survivor builds legacy from betrayal. You never gave interviews. Never called them out publicly. You didn't need to.
They did that to themselves.
Your silence made it louder. One morning, months later, Grandpa joined you in the garden, watching butterflies circle the roses. He said softly, "They thought they could bury you, you know." You looked over, brow lifted. "Yeah." He smiled. "But you were a seed." You both laughed. Not the bitter laugh of someone wronged, but the full, free laugh of someone risen. You redecorated your home, not with gold or marble, but with photographs, moments, letters from people who saw your story and reached out. Daughters, grandchildren, widows, lawyers, survivors. You keep them in a book on the hallway table. Not trophies, just reminders of how far a woman can rise when she refuses to be broken, even by blood. Grandpa turned 91 this year.
He didn't want a party.
He wanted lasagna, a movie, and one damn hour without a camera. You gave him all three, and that night you posted nothing online, except to your siblings. The annual photo, black and white.
Clean. Quiet. Grandpa. You.
Your husband. Together. Smiling.
Alive.
Still no caption. Because some stories don't need revenge speeches. Just success. And silence. If the people closest to you can fake a smile while plotting your downfall, make sure your comeback is something they can never fake their way out of. Like, share, and subscribe for more true-style, emotional revenge stories. Into the very legacy they tried to steal.